to start the recording and let's get ready. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us as always. We've got a really important subject to talk about today, and we don't have a lot of slides, a lot of visuals. So much of what we're talking about is in the mind, so I would like you to introduce yourself. If you'd like, I can do so. I'm sure I'm not going to do you the honor that you deserve. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, why don't you give it a try? I get tired of talking about myself sometimes, John.
I understand. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Andrew Menaker. He is a licensed clinical psychologist with a PhD in psychology. He likes to call himself more of a stretch than a shrink. I just love that. Since 1995, Dr. Menaker has been a performance coach for many top money managers, as well as many professional traders. And what makes Dr. Menaker so special, I think, to the trading community is that he's also recognized as an experienced and successful trader himself, a recognized expert in emotion management and intuitive development. You've got his web page, AndrewMenaker.com. You also have his Twitter page just below. He's just put up a new web page. Looks awesome, Dr. Menaker, as always.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it was a redesign that was about 11 years in the making.
Well, I know technology I don't know technology. I'm used to technology, and what
Yeah.
seems to what you think is going to take a year takes a lot longer than that, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, my old website was fine, but it was slowly breaking, and the new one really took me much longer to create. So yeah,
Now, did you do that yourself?
My wife and I did the design, and then I had a programmer who did the heavy lifting for me.
Because that would just be another amazing thing that you do if you were able to code that all yourself.
No, I wish I had those skills. No, not a programmer.
Well, introducing myself, as always, I have to. I'm the middle-aged performance coach here at Topstep. I've got 38 years of industry experience, not all of them necessarily trading, more like 28 to 30 years. My dad was on the trading floor for 40 years. He was a cash grain trader before that, so it seems that this was in my blood. I've traded on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange for over 20 years. 2009, seemed that it was about the right time, and I decided I was going to have to try and migrate to screen trading. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew I had friends that had tried and unsuccessfully to transfer from pit to screen trading. So I took my time. I took a year and just really kind of unlearned and relearned what I was going to be leaning on screen trading before I took my first live trade. And in 2011, met Michael at Topstep, found out what he was doing, and fell in love with the idea because I had the benefit of starting in a entry level position on a trading floor. I learned safely from professional traders every day. It wasn't going to be available, and it's one of the reasons that I think Topstep is so important for the trading community. And one of the most important members of that trading community is the good doctor who is with us today to discuss what is going on tilt. Why do we go on tilt? What can we do about going on tilt? I found this little picture that really, I think, represents what going on tilt is like.
Yeah, good picture. Boy, what happens when we go on tilt? Why do we go on tilt? How do we prevent or fix ourselves when we go on tilt? All those are great questions. And, I'm going to say the very first consideration with all those questions is this. Once you're on tilt, it's really hard to deal with that. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to kind of cut to the chase in a sense, is that the very best thing you can do when you're on tilt is step away from the market, which will be the hardest thing for you to be able to do. But I'm going to just say this. If a lot of folks who are listening to this are doing like Topstep combines or your sim trading or something like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, I may be wrong about this, I don't know. But I think with the combines, there's no time limit or timeline in terms of when you have to reach a certain number of trades. Is that true?
That is true, and
Yeah,
that's by design. You know, if
yeah,
you
yeah,
put
yeah,
those time-based goals ahead of you, you force yourself to do things you wouldn't normally do.
exactly. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that Topstep does not have the time constraints, because stepping away is the most, by far, there are other techniques we'll talk about today, but by far the most effective technique to not do damage when you go on tilt or further damage, we've already done some damage, is to step away. And that it really is the best technique. Now, let's talk about another approach or another aspect or another consideration of tilt, and that's this. It's a really important aspect. And that is, what can we do to prevent ourselves from going on tilt? How can we lower the odds that we go on tilt? I'm going to say this, that it's going to be hard to 100% escape tilt all the time forever, but we can certainly reduce the odds, and we can reduce the frequency, the number of times we go on tilt. And here's what we can do. First place to start is consider the fact that trading is not just a mental, intellectual brain activity. It also involves our body. So the idea of the interaction between our mind and body and brain, is the place to focus on first in terms of reducing the chances that you're going to go on tilt. If you are in a compromised state, and that can mean anything from being dehydrated, being hungry, being angry, being lonely, being tired, having
Hungover.
all that, low blood sugar, anything. There's a host of things that are not psychological. Well, they're psychological, but they're background things, have nothing to do with the market or your trading. And those factors have a huge input, they're huge inputs in terms of going on tilt, whether or not you go on tilt, how far, how long you're on tilt for, how intense it is. So I'm just going to say that that's a really big deal. And unfortunately, a lot of traders don't attend to that, what I call the foundation or the platform, which is your body, taking care of your body, the sleep, nutrition, fitness, those types of things. That's the place to start in terms of dealing with tilt, believe it or not.
Doctor, there's probably some external things that can increase your susceptibility to tilt if there's something unusual in your world outside of trading. Something happens,
Mhm.
something even as far as you have guests in your house that are making noise, that are messing with your concentration. Even
Mm-hmm.
something that simple can kind of make you more susceptible to it, would you say?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Oh, I personally experienced that myself, unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot. In fact, often what happens, I'm not going to say how often it is because it's different for people, but it is a common occurrence, is that many of the things that affect us in our trading that we recognize as being not favorable, they're negative, they have nothing to do with the trade or nothing to do with the market. They're often things outside of our trading in life, things that occur in our life. And it's a very um, common thing. So we have to pay attention to what's going on around us and what type of context, what's our personal context.
So part of, I would probably say, the most important thing is to, much like an alcoholic, is you have to recognize that you are in that frame of mind and admit you have that, if you would call it a problem at the time, and to be able to do what you said and step away. And we all know how hard that is, because there's always those what if factors. Well, what if the next trade's going to save me?
Yeah, and that'll always be the thought, right? I can pretty much Well, not guaranteeing anything, but I can say there's a very, very, very high chance, like a 99% chance that people are going to have that thought repeatedly. Oh, but the next trade will save me. If I can only do this, then I'll be okay. And if only that would happen, then everything will be fine.
And
That's, yeah,
and maybe I'll get away with it this time.
right. And I'll just, many, many years ago, I had a friend who's a professional poker player who transitioned to trading. And he shared with me, and he was very instrumental in my ability to kind of make the turn as a trader. And he said, look, in poker, it happens all the time. You make bad decisions and you realize you're making bad decisions. And then you make a promise to yourself to never make that bad decision again. And then you do it again anyways. And what he said to me was, when you make those promises to never do it again, that's a huge red flag, because you know you're going to break the promise. So you sort of have to get past the point of even making that promise with yourself. Making that promise, it's the last time I'm going to do this. If it works, then I'm home free. Huge red flag. It just means you're going to do it again.
So kind of trading into and through tilt would be more of impulse. The intuitive thing to do would be to walk away, succumbing to the impulse to do what we've done before, and maybe even successfully been able to pull out of a bad day, in kind of reinforcing bad behavior. That's an intuition. I mean, we all have things that we do in trading and other things in life that we seem to do automatically but never work, but we realize it right afterwards, like, oh, I always do that and it never works. Why do I do that?
Yeah. And I just want to just check on one little thing you said earlier a minute ago, John, was pulling yourself out of a bad day. When you're able to do that, or when a trader is pulling themselves out of the bad day and they're reversing their P&L from a bad tilt situation, and they're starting to make some money, they're coming back around. What's really important is this. And this is, unfortunately, this is sad but true. This is what's going to hold back most traders from really making it in the game, is that you need to understand and be honest with yourself. If you're making impulse trades, if you're doing crazy, aggressive, just not respecting risk, and that's how you're getting the money back, and that's how you're digging yourself out of the hole that day, you need to be really honest with yourself and acknowledge that those are bad trades, even though they've made money and got you out of the hole. I can't say enough. One of the biggest issues is, this is what holds traders back, is you have to learn to acknowledge that that making money does not mean it was a good trade. It does not mean you did well. It does not mean you were doing good, quote unquote. And likewise, taking that loss or sitting out and missing out, those types of decisions can actually be good decisions, good quality decisions for yourself to preserve your mental capital. So I'll just say that it's a really important thing. If you do find yourself digging yourself out of that hole, be really honest with yourself, because if you were digging out using impulse trades, man, it's just a matter of a short period of time before you're back in that hole again.
No, I think pretty much everybody has a tolerance level for a level of P&L loss, or sometimes I even see that it's a number of consecutive losing trades where they're going to get to that. They're going to flip that switch. They're going to go on tilt at some point. Just because you're down a little bit, if you're not on tilt, doesn't mean you can't dig your way out of that. It's when you feel that anger, venom, whatever it is that's creating that tilt type of situation, and you continue to try and push your way out of it, you can kind of instill number 4 trades, the trades that are out of your strategy that end up winning, that cause you to do it again. And eventually it's going to catch up to you.
It always does. And every trader thinks that they're going to be the one. They'll be the person who's able to avoid that, or to escape it, or to not cave into it again when it presents itself. And it's an ongoing challenge in the trading world. This is the thing that everyone is wrestling with: is, can I accept that sitting out in this market is maybe the best way for me to kind of get out of the hole rather than
Mhm.
putting on aggressive impulse trades.
Mhm.
Sitting out and waiting for me to get centered and grounded, to feel like I'm focused again, and or waiting for the market to come back to your type of market, right? We can't, I've never come across a trader that can trade every type of market well, right? Markets go through phases and kind of regimes or characters. So
Mhm.
you need to maybe wait it out until it's your market again. Maybe it's a few hours, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a few days. It's a major consideration.
Well, they say no position is a position.
Huh. It's often the best position. Yeah.
And especially when there's changes in the market state. We've talked about this before, doctor, where we go from a constant grind to the upside, like the equities had been doing, and now we're in a different kind of a position here. We're in more of a range bound volatile area, and it takes time to adjust your ability to recognize the opportunities now that it's a new position and in a new market state, if you will. And I can imagine a lot of folks don't recognize that there is a difference, or if by the time
Mhm.
they do recognize there is a difference, they're
Yeah.
either on tilt or worse.
Yeah. As we all know, John, they don't ring a bell when the market regime changes or the character of the market is going through a change, or this change is really going to last. We don't know. It's an ongoing dynamic thing to assess and assess for ourselves to figure out. I have a saying that I think really, to me, speaks to this whole thing about recognizing, whether or not it's your kind of market. And it has to do with ourselves, with our own psychology. And the saying is this: self-awareness, or I should say, greater self-awareness, expanded self-awareness, leads to and is related to expanded or greater market awareness. In the way that works, the connection between self-awareness and market awareness, the connection is this: when you are aware of not only what you're thinking and feeling, but why you're thinking and feeling. The why part is really important. When you're aware of that, it gives you it's a level of awareness that most people don't have. Most people know, well, some people don't even know what they're feeling, but most people know what they're thinking and feeling. But most people don't, even more people don't know why they're thinking and feeling that way. The why part is really important. So when you start to understand that level of have that level of awareness, the why am I feeling this way, you will start to see the market differently. That's what I mean by increased self-awareness. It leads to and or is related to expanded market awareness. A really important concept.
And it goes right along with your concept of, we're not trading the market, we're trading ourselves, we're trading our inner market.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's the sooner someone realizes that, the better. And then what'll happen when he realizes it, when you realize it, you have to continually remind yourself of that, because it's easy to forget it, and you will forget it. And there'll be moments where you lose sight of that. So you have to remind yourself of that. It's an ongoing kind of dynamic thing to be involved with this type of approach to trading, right? You have to, you are the agent. You're the trader. You're the one pushing the button, the buy or sell button. You're the the person who's doing it, the agent. That means you need to understand what's the underlying motivation for what it is you're doing.
If we can, I like to go a little deeper into
Yeah.
the roots of trading on tilt, and I could be wrong, but it always seems it's anger is the kind of root. We're angry at the market,
Mhm,
which
mhm,
doesn't know us.
mhm, mhm.
Who are we really angry at in this regard?
Yeah, yeah. The market is often it's the target of, it seems like it's the target of our anger, or it's why we're angry. It's the cause of the anger is what it often seems like. And on some level, it probably is. But like you sort of alluded to there, John, there's other things that we're responding to. It's that inner market. And one of the interesting things that I've found, I learned about, I saw this early on in my own trading, and I and I kind of figured this out very early on working as a coach with other traders, is this. One of the emotion that's kind of the elephant in the room that is really kind of really does, I think, is behind going on tilt very often. It's not so much anger. I mean, anger is definitely a big part of it for sure. I mean, everyone talks about fear and greed and anger. Those are the common emotions, anxiety, fear, missing out. But there's another emotion that's, I think, actually just as common. And from my personal experience as a trader and working with a lot of traders, I think it's true for most others as well. Another emotion that's actually worse in the sense that it's harder to deal with and recognize it in the moment and deal with it. And that emotion is regret. Regret is often much worse than even fear or anger. And the reason is that, while fear doesn't feel good and anger doesn't feel good, and it can make us be impulsive, and those are definitely not, I'm not suggesting that we should be angry and we'll do well. I'm not saying that at all. But the feeling that you made a mistake, or that you're about to make a mistake, or that if you don't, or if you book this loss here and it comes back in your direction and you could have had a winner, the idea that you're making a mistake is, and that there's nothing you can do about it is actually far worse than anger. And the reason is that we're powerless to change it. And powerlessness eventually kind of makes us feel kind of depressed. It leads us to feeling like you have no agency. And regret is a really very, very powerful emotion. Getting over regret is so much harder than actually recovering from other difficult emotions, believe it or not, because it tends to nag at us. It's if it's the only if I did this, only if I did that, or only if it would do this, and the anger kind of comes on very quickly, and it can leave somewhat quickly as well. Regret doesn't leave so quickly. It sticks around, and I think when regret starts to build up, that often becomes the moment, right, where we can go on tilt. It sort of becomes that final straw. So I'll just say that emotion of regret and the fear of regret, not wanting to experience regret, avoiding regret, the attempt to avoid regret is, I see it all the time in my trading, right? That's when I have a bad day, I can pretty much guarantee myself that it's probably because what was driving my behavior mostly is I was trying to avoid the experience of regret. And when I'm feeling really good and in the zone and in the flow and just kind of trading without much, what seems like without much emotion, and I'm doing well, then it's usually because I wasn't really concerned about regrets at all. I was just kind of trading kind of baggage free in those moments. So really clear to me.
Fascinating. Because as we talked about, I think the last time we talked, you mentioned that no matter how good a trade is, there's always a little degree of regret of something we may have missed, if we missed a part of the move, if we, even if it's a winning trade, there's a degree of regret, and it builds, you say.
It builds up. If you think about it, even if you're the best trader there ever was, you'd still be less than perfect because you can't get the entire move of every move, right? You're not going to get in at the very bottom of a move and get out at the very top.
Wait. You mean I'm not perfect?
Yeah. Once in a blue moon, that can happen, which is actually kind of dangerous psychologically. But the thing is, trading makes us feel bad. Even successful traders feel lousy. This is what's very surprising for people to hear is when I say things like this. But I'll tell you, more than half of my coaching clients are very successful traders. They came to me already successful. And they feel just as lousy very often as the people who aren't successful in trading. It's really interesting. And, you get out too early. You got in at you didn't have the right size on. You could have been bigger. You missed that part of it. There's always something we could have done better, right? Always. And because of that, because the market makes us feel bad the majority of the time, what's really happening is that site capital slowly getting eaten away. Even if you're trading well, even if you're following your plan, even if you're making money, and then eventually feeling bad because nobody is perfect, it can accumulate to the point where you can go on tilt, even for a really solid, successful trader.
Huh, that's fascinating. That is, I've been trading for forever, and it's always been, the amygdala, or fight or flight, or anger at the markets, and it's always anger at ourselves anytime we're angry at something like that. But it's never occurred to me that, there's always, we all have regret when we trade, and I didn't realize how much regret we even have, even when we're trading well. There's always something we could have done better, right? So if we beat ourselves up with that, it builds and creates that tendency towards tilt. Fascinating, doctor. That had not occurred to me.
Yeah.
That's why I love you. There's always so much we learn from you.
It's interesting, John. One of the things that I see in my coaching practice, and I've seen it with myself as well, is that somebody will go through a phase, a period of good trading, days, weeks, months, or whatever it may be. And then they go into a phase where they're still okay. They're not, but it wasn't as good as the previous phase. And they'll start to, you know, think about how they are not doing as well. And they will really perseverate, focus on, they will really get caught up in all the little things that are difficult in trading, even though they're doing well. They'll, all the moves that they missed and how they could have done this better and that better. And what'll happen is we start to we make these comparisons. And I'm not doing as good as I was doing last month, even if you're doing pretty good. Last month was a great month. You will regret the fact that you're not doing as well as last month, even if you're doing good right now. And that regret is very powerful.
And even if it's market state based that you're not making as much.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also why I like to always tell people, this is probably really especially important for probably a lot of your listeners to hear. So there's different types of kind of subgroups of traders out there, but many people who are on the newer end of trading, I know not everyone listening to this is on the newer end, but if you are, or if you're kind of in that phase where you're just, still really learning, sort of ingesting a lot of trading education stuff, what you're going to invariably hear at some point, if you haven't already heard it, is this idea of learn how to make X amount of dollars per day, and then you'll be fine. And educators like to say things like that because it seems to address the greed factor and the fear factor and all that. It doesn't at all. In fact, it actually screws people up. And the thing is, you need to recognize there are going to be some days, some periods where there's just bigger opportunities based upon your trading system, your strategy. And other periods of time where the opportunities are just not there. They're just not as often. And because of that, we can't force ourselves to come up with a certain amount of money, regardless of the market context. It's kind of like forcing something with a square shape into like a round hole, a square peg into a round hole. It's just not going to work. So there's this natural give and take that occurs in trading, even for good traders. And people who are not quite at that level of being kind of quote good trader, they don't recognize or realize that this natural give and take is part of successful trading, actually. And that can put them on tilt right there.
Something I always, when people say, well, I'm going to make this much per day, and, by the end of the month, I'll have this much. It's always a big caveat to say, you don't want to do that. You don't want to put yourself.
Oh boy. I call that running the numbers. Whenever I know of somebody who's running the numbers, I can make this amount, and then I add it up to the week or the month or this. I always tell them that is such a red flag, such a red flag.
Because it just pushes you out of any idea of a process or a strategy. I used to do that in the pit. I was looking to make $40, 40 ticks a day. 40 ticks a day was the goal, and I'd have 38 ticks in the bag. And just trying to get that last two fall out of a process, have a loss, another loss, and completely ruin a good day.
Yeah. So many people do that. Just the same exact thing, John.
Well, that's one thing I learned a long time ago. You have to take what the market's willing to give.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know what that's going to be from day to day. And to say that I'm going to have this number that I'm going to achieve or that I'm shooting for is that is, in some ways, it's almost, I don't want to say it's, well, I wasn't going to say it's arrogant, but it kind of is arrogant, actually. It's thinking that you're going to be able to trade your way through any market condition just the same way, which to me that's kind of arrogant, actually.
So we've learned a lot already here, Doctor. We've got a few questions here, and I'd like to kind of take some time. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of wrap up with as far as your comments on trading on tilt?
I just want to go back to that first thing I said today about the physiological, the body, the platform, right? If you take care of that, less chance you go on tilt. And if you do go on tilt, hopefully it'll be less intense if you have a good kind of physiological platform. And then the other thing is just step away. Last thing I'll say is this. Another kind of, think of this as like first aid. If you can't step away, but you should, but you can't. Another thing that could help, it's not as powerful as stepping away, obviously, is acknowledge verbally out loud where you can hear your own voice. I'm feeling this right now and I want to do this. Is this part of my plan? Literally, hear your own voice, acknowledge the fact that you're in this tilt situation and say it in your own words so you hear yourself.
One of the last things I was going to say is the recognition that you're there.
Yeah.
Is 80% of the problem.
But you got to call it out. You can't just have a mental recognition. We literally have to go another step and see ourselves or hear our voice and hold up the mirror, see yourself, hear yourself, acknowledging that you're on tilt.
What do you think of this, Doctor? Some of the people that I work with, there's always the impulses that people are, you get this impulse and you act on it really kind of without thinking about it. And we do these things over and over again. I know I've been guilty of it my entire career. Is I'll do something and then as soon as I'm done doing it, I'm like, oh, why do I do that? Kind of what we're talking about here with trading on tilt is I ask them to verbally out loud say, is what I'm about to do in my best interest? Is this in my best interest?
Yeah. I've been saying that for years. It's like really, and say it out loud. And for extra added oomph, look in a mirror or on a webcam, see your face as you're verbalizing it out loud. Mm-hmm. That will help with the for the self-honesty aspect.
Awesome. Okay. I have a question from somebody who has bought your course. He's really enjoying it. He's getting so much out of it, and he's got a question for you here. One problem is in my trading is failing to pull the trigger on trades that are within my strategy. The best trades always seem to have a tinge of doubt or fear mixed with the prospect of taking them. Since the best opportunities aren't around for very long, if I don't act when I see them, I'm going to miss the best. I'm going to miss the best location for the trade is what I think he's saying. What are some techniques to use in the moment in order to execute a trade despite the deer in the headlights fear that I'm feeling? Yeah. Or what would simply anticipating and recognizing the fear in the moment be enough to let me step into the trade? Yeah.
Well, since this person has the course, I would suggest have them go look at the ARTT of trading, that technique in one of the workbooks. Basically, for those who don't have it, it's what it's like is this. The idea is to predict that you're going to have that emotional experience before you have it. So you sit down and you're in your chair and you got your computer going and you're looking at the market and you're thinking that maybe there'll be this big fat pitch setup today, right? The one that you want to get on, but you're not sure it's going to work and you've been hesitating and freezing on. Well, predict for yourself what you're going to feel like when that setup does show up. At some point, it's going to show up, whether it's today or some other day. Predict for yourself what it's going to feel like. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to write it out or speak it out loud. Predict exactly what it's going to feel like for yourself, because you'll know what it's going to feel like because you've been there before. If you can predict what you feel before you feel it, it will give you a huge leg up on being able to behave differently next time around.
Awesome. I'm going to let him know that he's not here today, but he sent this, and he's such a good trade locator. If he could just trust those trades, he would be doing much better. I've been telling him accept the loss before you get in. You know where your risk is. You know the worst thing that's going to happen. Accept it and then get in.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's, I've told people that too. People hear that. It's good advice. It's solid advice. The reason why it doesn't always work, that advice, is because it's intellectual, right? It's like, oh, just convince myself it's based on intellectual willpower. Just accept it and get in, which can help. I mean, some people can do that, and many people do from time to time. It often is not what I've found for myself and for many people. It's usually not going to do it most of the time, to be able to say, all right, I've already taken the loss in my mind, so I can get in. Now, if you're someone that can that gives you some traction and you can actually get some movement with that in terms of your trading results, more power to you. I'm not saying it's not going to work. Just sort of sharing with what I usually see happening for people.
It may come from somebody I stood next to in the pit for a while, who every time he'd have a losing trade, he would verbally say, okay, good.
Yeah. And because it gives you he's probably thinking, I've got a fresh start now. I can look at the market more clearly now because I don't have any.
You don't have any stress.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, you know what? You're driving me crazy. Every time you have a loss, you're saying good. Why do you do that? He says, because I'm viewing the loss as buying information from the marketplace.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's now all of a sudden he has some clarity that he didn't have before. He has some information he didn't have before. Yeah.
All right. I have a question here from Art. It's a very long question. I'm going to try and edit it a little bit. He passed step 2 a couple of weeks ago, and he's moving into the funded or the pro account. So he's very glad this is a good move to him. He was very afraid to get off to a bad start. He's heard many people have kind of a mental breakdown once they get into the funded account, and he feels like this definitely happened to him. Sim to funded. Go.
Oh man. Yeah. It's, what does money represent to you? And I'm going to say it's not, it's not just money. It also represents, do you think you're good enough? Do you think that other people think you're good enough? Are you worthy enough? Do you believe you're worthy enough? Those are issues related to money. And those are some of the reasons, some of the common reasons, deep reasons why the turn or the transition from sim to cash is so difficult. We talk about, well, there's consequences, there's money involved now. Yes, that's the obvious conscious difference. But on a subconscious level, there's much more happening. Again, what is your experience around success? Is there a fear of success, the self-sabotaging? What does money represent? Those are the things that often need to be dealt with when someone is recognizing that they're trading very differently when they are on cash versus on sim. Everyone trades somewhat differently, that's for sure. But if you are like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, really different, then those issues I mentioned are going to need to be looked at. Otherwise, you'll just be going around and around and around.
So he's also, and we already talked about this in this meeting, in this session today. He's kind of stressed about a personal trip where he's going to have too many people staying for about a week. Don't trade if that's the case.
Oh, totally. Yes, the markets will be here when your trip is over. That's the beauty of being a trader, right? You can make your own schedule.
Now, his next question speaks exactly to what you went to when you were answering that question. His question is, how do I stop the spiral of thinking that you're the worst trader and sometimes the worst person in the world? I even start thinking things like, maybe God doesn't want me to trade, or I need to do something else. How do we, I mean, this is a long-term question. If there's one thing that you can suggest to Art, I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Well, Art, as I'm sure you know, we are not meant to be trading. The brain is not designed for trading. Really, it's not. Trading is a very difficult endeavor. And so the advice here is because it's such a difficult endeavor, it requires that we really have to take care of ourselves in a way that we probably don't have to in other endeavors. And that's why things like, knowing what you're feeling and why you're feeling it at all times is so paramount in trading. It's so important. And I'm just going to leave it at that. It's all about your personal, not just the market context, but your personal context as well.
Thank you, Doctor. Art, I'm sure is thanking you as well. I got Murph here who's got a question. As someone that has made money for years playing poker, I never had a problem with tilt as a poker player. Now I make a mistake and it can at times make me crazy. Next thing you know, I've tried to make 15 to 10 trades, 5 to 10 trades in 2 minutes. Not really a question, more of a statement. Thank you, Murph, for that. Anthony is asking, Dr. M, what can you do to prevent tilt on really bad days from carrying over into the next trading session?
Yeah, well, this is where breaks again are your best friend. So if you had a horrible Tuesday, for instance, maybe you don't trade Wednesday. Maybe you take a day or 2 days off. The idea is to get some distance. Sometimes I refer to it as changing the venue. If you go back to the sort of the scene of the crime too soon, it's possible that you're going to be re-experiencing those emotions all over again. So give yourself a little distance with time, right? So I'm going to say one of the things is to not necessarily think you got to jump right back on that horse the next day. Another thing you can do, there's a lot of things you can do, but one is this: do some mental rehearsal the night before, or actually the day after, or the day of that evening of a bad day. Before you go to bed, do some mental rehearsal where you get yourself in a relaxed state and see yourself carrying out what you want to do as a trader the next day, following through with your ideas and plan. And then in the morning after you wake up, before you look at the market, again, before you look at it, do another quick 3-minute mental rehearsal session as well. It could be a nice technique. But the big one is question: do you need to be going right back to the market the next day? I don't know. It's a question that everyone needs to answer for themselves.
Doctor, do you feel like, being on tilt or the regret or the anger, anything that we feel towards ourselves in this regard can be considered venom? I mean, venom is poison, and until you learn to release that venom, it builds.
Yeah, it has a toxicity to it for sure. And the building up of it, of course, is very harmful because of the toxicity. But I'm also going to say that the anger, the negativity, there is a logic to it. There's a reason why we have these negative experiences, and to understand the logic as to why we have them is really helpful. Actually, to not, I mean, yes, we want to deal with them and move the negative energy out of us for sure. I totally get that, but we also want to have a sense of how this came to be in the first place. Otherwise, it's going to continue. It's going to be, you'll never really kind of get very far with it.
Okay. I've got something here from our friend Level 2. I'm not sure if this is so much of a question or a statement. I'm going to read it. My issue is coming from 3-point mini scalper back in 2015, when the average day range was 15 points, to trading micros looking to be more of a position trader. It's the old habits that catches me chasing sometimes. It's kind of why I play video games on my streaming computer while I trade, so I don't get trigger happy. I think he's saying, a previous strategy that was working for him back in the day was much shorter time frame, and now that he's looking to be a more of a longer time frame trader, he's still getting the urge to be more active in shorter time frames.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that personally. Totally. I mean, markets you've got these incredibly huge ranges and the volatility. And so here's something I'll share with you that may help you. I don't know. But it's this: in the last several years, last 3, 4, or 5 years or so, I have seen fewer and fewer and fewer people able to succeed at the shorter time frames, to the point where I really don't know very many at all at this point. People who are in and out, in and out, in and out all day long, kind of quote unquote scalping. You might have a few good days, a day here, a day there, even a week maybe. It's extremely rare to see anybody who can kind of pay the bills for a few months of doing that. Very rare these days.
It's a niche that's largely been taken over by the machines.
Yeah, you're fighting the algos. The algos, in the high frequency shops, those people pretty much kind of took that out of our hands, unfortunately.
Do you feel as though working in a longer time frame, they're not going to bother us as much?
Well, they're there, and it'll affect price action for sure. But you have to learn to recognize that for what it is, and that's why it's always good to kind of. I think for myself, I think in terms of areas or zones rather than exact price levels. And for certain markets like the NQ, it's like 10 or 20 points in the NQ is like, to me, that's noise, right? Now, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that was a fairly significant something.
Right.
But not now. 20 points in the NQ is really nothing. 6, 7 points is literally the blink of, it's slippage. So it's really kind of crazy what's happened.
I don't know how people trade that NASDAQ. It gives me heart palpitations.
It's a beast. I actually like it. There is a way to, you got to be real small and real tactical, but there's definitely a way to do it.
We have Ashton saying, I think we're talking about the time-based rules, and he said, some people are trying to hurry and beat the subscription fee to move on to the next level at Topstep, and I get that.
Yeah,
it may end up costing you more in the long run. Sometimes slow is fast in this industry.
Well, and I'll just say, not to sometimes, most of the time. And if you're in a hurry, another red flag. I hate to keep using that phrase, red flag, but it's true. The more you're in a hurry, you need to recognize that you're not doing yourself any favors by being in a hurry with trading. It's just, you can't push it. You really can't.
Christopher is saying yelling at the market helps. I've tried that. Standing on your head and holding your breath at the same time sometimes works too.
Yeah. Only when you're looking east.
Level 2 is just commenting, building a habit is easy. Breaking them is 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Don't we all know that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pam is asking, what happens when we go on tilt? Best thing to do is take a break. Tilt prevention. Going over what we were talking about. Tilt prevention, considering the trading is not just mental. What does your body need first? Yeah, just kind of looking.
She kind of got the main ideas there. It's good.
Yeah. Thank you for putting that there, Pam. it's some good notes for somebody to copy and paste about today. Speaking of external pressures, this is level 2 again. I personally went through last month and spent a lot more than budgeted on my house repairs. He was level 2, lives in the wake of one of the hurricanes that happened. So all that money, put pressure on himself and kind of blew up 2 combines in literally 2 days. It's so hard to when there's external pressures like that, again, just step away. And I know it's hard. We all feel like we're going to miss the big move and the whole what if factor, but if things are awry outside of trading, they're going to be awry in your trading.
Yeah. Yep. Missing the move thing. One of the things that I've done for myself is, it's helped sometimes more than other times, but it's something I still do for myself because it does seem to help at times, is this. I know that I'm not going to catch every big move. I know I'm going to miss moves for sure. So what I do is I'm always telling myself, always reminding myself that whether I'm doing well, like when I'm doing well, or if I'm doing bad, when I'm doing bad, poorly, it doesn't matter. I'm constantly reminding myself that there will be other moves. And it kind of serves to kind of keep me in check a little bit, because I know that, I like to have action. I don't want to be sitting around with nothing to do. And so I want to always be reminding myself that this is a game where I'm participating with something where there is continuous new opportunities constantly showing up, and I'm going to miss a lot of them, and that's okay. I've known from my coaching, it's sort of an advantage I have, I guess. I've personally known traders who've missed a lot of big moves and who still did really well. So that helps to remind me of that very fact. it's okay to miss moves. I can still be very successful.
Thank you, Doctor. We have Mark asking, what is a good way to get back into process-driven trading mindset after being away from the markets for a while?
Yeah, a lot of things here. Well, start measuring and literally counting how many times you look at your P&L, and literally keep track of it and see if you can make a goal to reduce that number each day or as the weeks wear on. Because the more you look at that, you're gonna be focused on the outcome of each trade. Whereas, as this person was suggesting, they want to get back to a process focus. Another thing you can do is evaluate. This is a really helpful one, very big and very involved actually, but I'll just briefly mention it. Figure out a way to evaluate your trading day based upon the quality of your decision making separate from the outcomes. So it doesn't matter if you made money or lost money. Well, it does matter, but what's important in the evaluation is what was the quality of my decision making. I had a ton of really bad decisions that I made. Bad meaning they were impulse, or I disrespected my stop. But yet I made money. Well, you need to recognize that for what it is. Or I had good quality decisions. I waited for my levels and I took them, but I ended up losing money. I feel really bad about that. Okay, that's something you want to evaluate and make sure that you acknowledge the good quality process you had. So you can, and you have to do this day after day after day. It takes a while to build the focus, the renewed focus on process and quality of process. And the way you do that is look at your outcomes separately from the process every day.
Doctor, I think what we should do is for subsequent meetings, put your hierarchy of decision making just on every slide.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that can change for different people, though. I mean, I
Mm,
wouldn't say it's fixed necessarily, the hierarchy. I mean, there's certain things that tend to be more important for most people, but
mm.
doesn't play out that way specifically for everybody.
Well,
There's some variation, but yeah.
maybe I'll try and keep it handy for the next time, right?
Sure.
Mark also has another question, and this is fascinating. I'm really interested to hear what you say about this. I heard somewhere that social media is training us to have shorter and shorter attention spans. Is there a way to retrain our brain against that and maintain focus?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're specifically intending to make us have shorter attention spans. It's been the effect of what they're doing is we're certainly getting shorter attention spans. That's for sure. What can you do? I mean, yeah, you can involve yourself in things like reading. Get yourself a good book. Um, Mindfulness meditation, learning to pay attention to something and not judging yourself when your mind drifts away from whatever you're paying attention to, like your breath, mindfulness meditation. So those would be two wonderful activities. Read helps you to kind of maintain focus, stay with something you're reading, and mindfulness meditation is 5 minutes a day. And I think you'll start to notice that you're now, unless you have some type of like an ADHD diagnosis or something else going on, that's a whole nother story. But for many people, mindfulness meditation will get you kind of more in the moment, more focused.
The brain is a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. It's
It,
the more you
it,
can just,
it'll
work it,
atrophy
work them
like
up.
any other muscle.
Yeah. And think of like 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation. Think of that as like a gym session for your mental muscles. It's like you're pumping some mental iron there. You're working it out.
Okay. All right. I think, Doctor, we are eternally grateful for your time. I think we're kind of, there's some conversation going on in the chat here that I think is more kind of folks kind of talking about the things that you've talked about today. I hope that everybody finds this opportunity to spend with Dr. Menaker as valuable as it is and as I do.
Uh-huh.
Doctor, I was going to kind of show you something. Some
Uh-huh.
of the things that I show are dad wisdoms. That's my dad. He was on the floor of the Board of Trade for 40 years. He was charged with hedging the grain products that Ralston Purina needed to make their animal feeds as well as consumer staples. He was a hell of a guy. And as I got into trading, he always had these wisdoms, and this was one of them. And I thought it kind of fit today. Is it really doesn't pay to be mad. Half of the people you're mad at don't know you're mad at them, and the other half don't care. The only person that this venom that we create inside ourselves affects is truly us.
Very, very well said.
He was a hell of a man. Lost him about 2016. So, but I keep his wisdoms in mind. And thank you very much, Doctor. Anything else you want to say?
Just remember, whether you're trading well or trading poorly, trading makes us often feel bad, and there's regrets. So that's okay. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just part of the game, and just realize that.
You hear that, everybody? And I found out today that I'm not perfect. God, such a rough day. All right, Doctor, thank you so much.
All right.
Looks like next Wednesday, April the 7th, the first Wednesday of the month, is going to be our next opportunity to talk. Doctor, part of me thinks that we should almost just let the questions control the next meeting, or we can come up with another subject. We'll talk about that later. I'll get some feedback from the folks that were here today. Thank you so much, Doctor. As always, it's a pleasure. Always enjoy this so much. You make my month.
Thank you, John. Great to be here. We'll look forward to next time.
Have a great rest of the week, great rest of the month. Trade well, take it easy, be easy on yourself. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
All right.
Have a good one. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.